just wanted to say how excited I am to talk to you tonight, because usually we don't get much of a chance to talk. Ellen's the co-president of the Actors Studio. I'm on the board, but we're always so busy we never have a chance to really talk. So this is going to be fun for me. You know, I reread your book again, which, by the way, is a fantastic book. It's a real journey, a real spiritual journey, a real creative journey. And you know, it could be a movie.
Oh, really?
Don't you think? I mean, you've gone through so much.
I know. I think there's a little too much, though.
No.
I don't think you can fit it in a movie.
You don't? No, come on. But it really is the most incredible kind of book, because it starts with a violent, abusive kind of childhood and segues into you running away from home and all sorts of reversals of fortune, and then tremendous and deserved success. And also it is a great spiritual journey. So it's all these things rolled up into one.
That was my image, that it was a braid.
A braid?
I was braiding my professional life, my personal life, and my spiritual life together into a braid.
Well, the other thing I thought was so great was that you had in your, I guess, storage place or your basement, she saved everything. She saved her scripts and her notebooks and everything, which must have been very valuable for your book.
I don't know what made me save all that stuff. I must say I kept journals from as far back as I can remember and notebooks. And I hadn't really reread any of them. I just kept tossing them into boxes and carting them around across the country and around the world. And only when I started writing the book did I go back and read them all. And I was just amazed, I must say. First of all, that I kept them. And that I ever wrote in them.
and journals too. I mean, journals about everything, really.
Well, I found the thing that amazed me most was in the first rehearsal for the first play I ever did in 1956, at the table reading, there was on a break when everybody went and did whatever they did. I sat at the table and described everybody in the room, what they were doing, who was working the crossword puzzle, who was studying their lines, who was nervously pacing. And I thought, when I read that, why did you do that? What would possess you to write that? And it occurred to me somewhere along the way that I had planned to write this book, but I didn't know it.
Well, you also talk about memories,
Mm-hmm.
and all the memories you have, and you have an incredible memory.
I do have a good memory.
Which is fabulous to have.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the quote by I.B. Singer, "The more memories you have, the more you know you have lived"?
No.
It's not a great quote. It
Yeah.
certainly fits you, because the memories you have are just endless and incredible.
Can I tell them about the first time we met?
Yep.
It was 50 years ago, and it was my audition for the first Broadway play I did. And I should back up a little bit and tell you about that. I was a model in New York. And one day I said, I've made up my mind to be an actress. I'm going to do a Broadway play this fall. Does anybody know how I can get an audition? And somebody said yes, and got me an audition for the part of a model. And I did the audition, and the first time I walked out on the stage, it was the Ethel Barrymore Theater. I had never studied acting. I had never auditioned. And I had the script, and it was the part of a character named Susan Hammerly, a model, and it's her first day in New York. And so I walked out on stage and I said, okay, it's my first day in New York, my first apartment. And I tried to remember my first apartment in New York because I had to be all excited. And I said, so it's my first day in New York. I remember that. And suddenly this voice in my head said, no, you're on the stage of the Ethel Barrymore Theater, about to audition for your first Broadway play. And I got so excited. It gave me everything I needed to play the scene. And I was called back for a second audition a month later. And by that time, they had narrowed it down to 2 actresses, myself and Patricia Bosworth. So we met out in the house, and we introduced ourselves to each other, and it was between her and I 50 years ago. So you don't know what's in store for you, how you're going to end up with somebody that you meet at an audition.
And then later on we met at the Actors Studio.
That's right, and we served on the board
And actually
together.
I had forgotten, I think I conveniently forgot. I didn't want to remember, because you know, when you get turned down for a part, it's difficult.
Yeah, but then you went on to write.
Yes, but I was still an
4
actress
books.
for quite a long time before that. So,
Were you?
Yeah. But anyway. Oh, he doesn't remember.
That was
okay, a lot of my
rude.
shows were flops, okay? We're not talking about me. But seriously, how do you remember yourself then? I mean, were you very different when you went out on that? First of all, you had many different names. You used, what was your name then?
Well, I kept changing my name. I was born with Edna Ray Gillooly. Yeah, see? That's why I changed it. So I was a model, I was Edna Ray, and then I was a chorus girl, and I was Carrie Flynn.
I like that one.
Spelled Keri. And then I was, when I was first acting, I was Ellen McRae. And then I married a Mr. Burstyn and became Ellen Burstyn. But there were a lot of other ones in between there. How do I remember myself? I think of myself, my favorite description of myself at that time, because I was a model, you know, I was a bit of a babe. And, and all I could think about was how to be more of a babe. And the image I had once was that I was like a rabbit in the woods that was food for everybody. And all I could think about was how to be a more delicious morsel.
Wow. But what about when you were in the Jackie Gleason show and you suddenly, didn't you cut your hair and you put a kerchief around your neck or something and you looked at yourself in the mirror and said, you know, I'm pretty terrific? You don't remember?
I wonder what you're remembering there. I don't remember.
You dressed in a different way
I know what you're
after
talking
you'd
about,
been
yeah.
on the Jackie Gleason show, after she'd been
I know
in
what
the
you meant.
chorus.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you suddenly, we're sort of backtracking because
I know what you're talking about. It was just one of those days. I was on the Gleason show, and it was when the show was live from the theater where David Letterman does his show now. It was the Ed Sullivan Theater. And there were the June Taylor dancers, there were the showgirls, there were the Away We Go girls, and then there were the girls that were the tie-in between the show and the commercial. That was me. So we would, you know, look into the camera and smile seductively and say whatever the name was of the commercial. And so there were a lot of girls, a lot of beautiful girls, and I always used to sit around and wonder what I was doing there. And then there was that day when I just walked in. I had my hair done, and I was wearing all black, and I tied on a red scarf, and I walked into the theater, and I felt all of the heads turn and look at me, and the room got very quiet, and I suddenly had this, like, little plume of confidence rise up in me. I went, oh, okay, I guess I'm not so bad. It was like the beginning of some sense of self, you know, of carrying some sense of that I had something to offer.
And then did you start studying acting after you did the Broadway show, the first Broadway show?
Not for a while. I did the first Broadway play, and I worked for a few years. I can't remember how many right now, maybe 8 or 9 years, just on my raw talent. And then one day I was making a film in California called Goodbye Charlie, starring Debbie Reynolds and Walter Matthau and Tony Curtis. And I was co-starring in it. And I was sitting on the set, wearing a wig designed for Shirley MacLaine in a previous movie. I had been made up and costumed, and I felt like this kind of manufactured doll. I was waiting to go on. And I looked around the set and I said, well, this is it. This is the big time. I'm here. Next step is I'll be playing Debbie Reynolds' part. And that same voice in my head spoke to me and said, I don't want it. Much to my surprise. And I got up and left Hollywood and came back to New York and went to Lee Strasberg and said, teach me how to act, please. And
So
that began
happened.
my serious studying.
And that was a real turning point to start studying with Lee.
Huge. It was a huge turning point because until then, everything I had done was sort of getting by on my looks, getting by on whatever I could come up with that would make anybody think that I knew what I was doing, which I didn't. And when I went to Lee, he taught me to be serious. He taught me to look beyond the surface, to find out what was really going on inside of me, which I didn't have a clue. And being exposed to a man of his intelligence and intensity and learning and care really changed my life. It was something I had never known before, to really go into the depths of the human psyche. I didn't know the human psyche had depths. I didn't even know there was a human psyche. But he was a great teacher, and that was one of the biggest gifts to my life, is to be exposed to him.
He wanted you to take risks. Didn't he talk about that? To take risks,
yeah.
to make
Yeah,
mistakes
he did.
and go beyond them. And
Yeah, I the first time I worked for him, the first exercise was to create whatever you have for breakfast. Create an imaginary cup of coffee or whatever it was. And I was working on that. He didn't know me. It was the first time I worked. And I saw him out of my peripheral vision look at the cards he had in his hand with the name of each student on it. And he said, Ellen? I said, yes. He said, keep on doing what you're doing, but answer my questions. So I was busy with my cup of coffee. And he said, do you ride horses? I said, yes. He said, do you ride well? And I said, well, I don't ride so much anymore. I used to ride well when I had my own horse. There was a long pause, and he said, well, you don't have to ride that horse, that cup. You don't have to ride that cup. And I was kind of shocked. I didn't know exactly what he meant. And I looked at him, and he said, what would happen if you made a mistake? Go on, make a mistake. And I started inexplicably crying. And it was like he unmasked me in that moment, And that was kind of the beginning of my realization that the persona I had developed over the years had served me well up to a certain point, but it was time to step out from behind it. And it took a few years to learn how to do that, but with his help, I learned the value of being able to be in touch with your own soul and be willing to reveal it to people.
didn't you also, at that time, or when you were first studying with Lee, you were on a soap opera, The Doctors, and you were able to use what you'd been learning in class. You could sort of experiment with sense memories and things like that.
We were doing the show live at the time. Then soap operas were always done live, and from the NBC studios. And so I used to take my acting exercises that he assigned to work with me and then do them in the show live on the air. Nobody knew but me, but it was a great training ground.
Oh, I can imagine. Did you do it a lot?
All the time.
All the time?
Yeah. I mean, I would be looking out at the wall of NBC studio if we were standing. I remember this one particular one. We were on a balcony, and of course, you know, there's nothing in front of us but cameras and the lights and the wall of the studio. But we were supposed to be looking out over the starry sky of the city. So I was there creating, you know, sensorially the starlit night and seeing the planes move across the sky. I was completely involved in all of the sensory work I'd learned from Lee. Nobody else knew what I was doing. Of course, it just looked like an actress out there on the balcony, but I was practicing.
And what about the so-called private moment, which I've seen you do them there. So to be learning how to be private in public, and that takes years, doesn't it, to do these private moments and to do them
Sometimes.
properly, to do them for real.
Sometimes some private moments came more easily than others. It depends really kind of on the belief in the circumstances. I always found when Lee assigned us a private moment, the most important thing was building the place in which I could be private. So, you know, creating the place with the senses and seeing it as though it's actually there creates a sense of privacy if it's a private place.
Did you use that? Have you used that a lot in the movies? It seems you could. I mean,
sometimes, yeah. You know, movies are such a funny situation to be creative in because there are so many people around that are involved in, you know, lights and sandbags and stands and people standing around, cameramen and cameras and everything, that you kind of have to create your own reality that either blocks them out if you can or includes them in a way that they just become part of what you're creating.
No, I just wondered because certainly in all your great movies, like particularly Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, you seem to have created such reality for yourself, such a personal reality.
Well, Marty Scorsese is a great help in creating reality because he has such a strong drive for reality in his work that it all becomes very real. I mean, your relationships become real and what you're doing in the moment and the place you're working in. It's not, you don't really have a sense of making a movie. You have a sense of living that life. I think that's really Marty's genius. I think that's what he does better than anybody else.
But I'm going to backtrack now and go back to the beginnings of your movie career, which are so, for me, fascinating. And the first time I saw you, I think, was in The Last Picture Show, which to me is one of the great movies. It must have been an incredible experience to work in that situation with. Well, first of all, backtracking again, you read for all three of the women's parts. The Clara's.
I did.
Tell about that.
When I was asked to read for the part of the waitress that was later played by Eileen Brennan. And so I went in and read for that part for Peter Bogdanovich and Polly Platt, his wife at the time, who was the art director. She was also in the room. And then I said to him, but the part I really want to read for is Lois Farrow, the coach's wife. And he said, all right, read for that one too. So I read that part. And he said, you know, I'd like you to read the part of Ruth Popper, which is the part later that Cloris Leachman played. So I said, all right. So I read for that role. And when I finished, he said, okay, so we know you're in the movie. Now we just have to figure out which part you play. And I always wanted to play Lois, and he always wanted me to play Ruth. But and he called me and said, you know, I have several actresses who could play Lois. I can't find anyone to play Ruth. I think you're going to have to play it. I said, no, I don't want to. And then he called me one day and said, okay, I found Cloris Leachman. She can do it. You can have Lois. I said, okay. He said, I don't know why you don't want to play Ruth. That's the Academy Award winning part, and he was right, it was.
Oh, that she won the Exorcist. But you were nominated for
I was nominated too. But at that time, I was going through so much Sturm and Drang in my life that I didn't want to play a character who is down underneath it. I wanted to play a character who was on top of it. So that's what I needed for my own personal story at the time.
So you didn't regret not doing
No,
that?
I didn't regret it at all. But Cloris and I became fast friends.
But that was that particular period was one wonderful part after the other. It was what the
70s.
The 70s when you were in the movie with Bruce and Bruce Dern and Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Marvin Gardens.
King of Marvin Gardens.
Marvin Gardens.
And The Exorcist and Alice and.
Well, I would like to talk a little bit about The Exorcist, because to me that is one of the most frightening movies I've ever seen. I assume you've all seen it. How did you get through it? It just seems like such an unbelievably intense and theatrical and scary experience.
All of that, yeah. You know, those kind of experiences are so rich and thrilling in a way that it's not so much a question of getting through them as of who do you become having gotten through them, you know?
Right.
You endure it, and at the same time it feeds you and deepens you and teaches you, because it was huge. I mean, we shot for 8 months. There were many, many, many weird, terrible, scary, spooky things that happened during the course of it. It felt like we were playing with fire.
A lot of the people died. I mean, several people died in the cast.
A lot of people died.
Okay, a lot of people.
I mean, indirectly. You know, Max von.
Yeah, didn't really.
Well, yeah, not on the set. Max von Sydow's brother died. Linda Blair's grandfather died. The man who refrigerated the set died. The actor who played Burt Dennings, the director of the film, who dies in the film, finished shooting, died. That was 5. The cameraman his wife gave birth to a baby who lived 3 days and then died. That was 6. There were a couple more.
But it really was.
I think there were 7. I think there were 7 altogether. It was a very, very unsettling experience. But it was also creatively unsurpassable. Billy Friedkin was at the top of his form. He was a magnificent director. And everybody connected with the film was aware that we were dealing with some really volatile material. So it was exciting and terrifying and interesting and enriching and everything.
Because you spent a lot of time writing about it in the book because there was so much that went on, and I just felt that must have also, at the same time, you were in a way starting your own spiritual journey in a very serious way, your spiritual journey with yourself.
Well, I started that just before the last picture show, actually, in 1970. Or I started in the late 60s and then in the 70s. So, and I was glad that I had some spiritual practices to help me through The Exorcist, because there's a lot of praying going on that set, I'll tell you.
I'll bet. There was. I can imagine. Jesus,
I'm not kidding.
I would think so. You've got to read that book. But then right after that, was it right after that you did Alice?
Yeah.
Because that was also an enormous turning point for you, I think. I mean, what I was particularly interested in was your awareness suddenly. I mean, I hope everyone's seen Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, about a woman becoming independent, really, and breaking the ties of kind of with a lot of men in her life and doing what she wanted to do in her life creatively. But that was really a turning point, to have that kind of part, to play that kind of part.
It was because it was in the early 1970s, and the women's movement had just erupted, and the consciousness of women was changing, and mine was changing, and I was at the end of a difficult marriage, and a lot of the things that I was going through and understanding about my place in a relationship got put into that film. I remember, I write about this in the book, coming home one time from shooting, not Alice, was earlier when I was shooting a television show, and I came home and my husband was sitting in front of the TV set watching a baseball game or something, and there were ashtrays around him that were full and several beer cans. I think he was smoking a joint too. And I'd been shooting 12 hours that day, and I came in, and as I opened the door, he said, "Hi, babe, what's for dinner?" And I just had this moment of, there's something wrong with this picture. But what is it? I just couldn't get it, you know. Later, I understood what was wrong with that picture. But so it was right at that period where we hadn't really challenged the old norms yet. They were just beginning to be challenged. And so that was what I wanted to make a movie about. And it was while I was shooting The Exorcist that the executives at Warner Brothers were looking at the dailies as they came in every day. And John Calley at Warner Brothers sent me a message, said, "We'd like to do another film with you." And I said, "Great, what do you want to do?" And they started sending me all the scripts they had where there was a part I could conceivably do. And in every single script, the woman was either the wife who was sending her husband off to save the world and keeping dinner warm for him while he did that, or she was a whore, or what was the third one? A sex object, I don't think, or a bad girl. I mean, somebody who was really, a killer or something. But there were no human beings. There were no women as I knew them, as I was seeing women around me. So I said to Warner Brothers, I'd like to make a movie about a woman as I understand what a woman is today. So they said, great, what would that look like?
But you found Alice, didn't you, or somebody?
Yeah, I found Alice, and
what did John Calley say to you?
He said, "Who do you want to direct it?" And I said, "I don't know, somebody new and interesting and exciting." He asked me if I wanted to direct it, and I said no, I wasn't ready for that. And so I called Francis Coppola, and I said, "I'm looking for a director that's new and exciting. Do you know anybody?" He said, "Well, look at a film called Mean Streets." So I looked at Mean Streets, which was Marty Scorsese's first film, and it wasn't out yet, but Warner Brothers owned it, and they showed it to me. And I had a meeting with Marty, and he came into John Calley's office, and he was a very extremely nervous, high-strung Italian guy, and he sat in the chair, and I said, "I really liked your film a lot, but there was only one woman in it, and she isn't a very developed character, and this is a film I want told from a woman's point of view. What do you know about women?" And he said, "Nothing, but I'd like to learn." So I thought that was a really good answer. So we hired him to do Alice.
But you also had this kind of epiphany, like maybe it was during or right after, that maybe you should have accepted the title of executive producer.
Well, yes, that would have been nice. My consciousness wasn't developed enough yet to know that the one who's executive producer is the one who has final word. I thought it was just a title, that you just got to have your name up there. I didn't really understand that it's where all the power resided. And so had I, when they sold the film to television, I would have been part of that package. I mean, as far as receiving the profits, which I wasn't. But that was never really my focus anyway.
No, I know that, but it just is something.
But it's one of those things that it's a good example of how when your head is formed at a certain in a certain way, it takes a lot to wake up and think in a new way. So it took me a while to finally say, I've put this package together and I'm the executive producer. It was quite a few years before I did that.
And then right after that, you came back to Broadway with Same Time Next Year. I mean, right after you did, which was, yeah. And you won the Tony. You won the Tony and the Academy Award in the same year. That must have been what an experience, a heady experience.
Yeah, well, all those award things are so weird. They really are. I mean, like Marty winning the award this year because they should have given it to him other years and they didn't, so now he gets it this year. And they're always a little off. It's never quite exactly you get the award you should, you get it for the year you shouldn't have. They're a bit of a mess, I think. And I also, there is something perverse about finally getting a nomination, which, by the way, is a great experience. To be nominated is just wonderful. But then after that, everything after the nomination is where it starts to get really unsavory in some way. So that then everybody gets invited, all the nominees get invited to the party, and then one of them gets to be a winner, and you other four are losers. Go home, you losers. So, it just is a weird thing. I wish they'd just nominate people and give them all the awards.
How do you feel about acting on stage versus the movies? In other words, Same Time Next Year, you were so great in that, and you've done lots of theater. Do you enjoy the theater as much as movies? Or?
I love it.
Honest answer.
I just think there's nothing like the experience of taking, I did Long Day's Journey into Night twice, once at the Alley Theater and then a year later at the Hartford Stage in Connecticut. And working on that role, I mean, to me, it's the greatest role ever written for a woman in the theater. And the experience of taking on a human being like that, created by the greatest writer these shores have ever produced, and taking all those beautiful words and the layers and layers and layers and starting to dig your way down in there and feel all of the things that are going on in this human being and bring it up and turn it into a creation and offer it to people and go back the next night and say, now look at it this way and do it another way, and just keep building that and creating it until you're just alive with this glory. There's just nothing like it in the world. I adore it.
Well, I'd like to just ask you a little bit about your teaching. Do you enjoy that too? She's a master teacher, by the way. You are.
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia. I moderate the sessions at the Actors Studio whenever I can. And the Actors Studio now has a master's degree program at Pace University, and I do a workshop there, hopefully for each group, each cohort. I love to teach because I love to see new talent. I love to have the opportunity to awaken talent the way Lee awakened me, if that's possible. I think it's the greatest gift you can give anybody. So I like getting in there with the actors and helping them to find the questions, because that's really what the creative process is just finding more and more and more and more and more questions about. Every time you understand something about a character, then that takes you to another layer to understand, and another layer. And I love being with the students in that exploration. So yes, I enjoyed teaching a lot.
Well, Lee asked you to teach, didn't he? I mean,
Yeah.
he chose you and a couple of others to just sort of carry on his work, really.
Yeah, he started me teaching in the 70s. And I remember once I came to him and I said, Lee, you know, sometimes when I'm moderating, something occurs to me to say, and then I go, is that the method? I don't know if it is or not. And I'm not sure if I'm allowed, if I can say it. And he said, darling, always rely on your own experience and you can't go wrong. So I've taken that as my guide. Whenever I'm talking to an actor, I always try and talk from my own experience. And so I'm saying what I know, you know, that anything that I'm offering is something that I've tested and that I've seen work. And so that's what I do.
When in your home, sometimes you've had these wonderful Shakespeare plays in the garden. Do you direct them, or do you just have friends come over? And
well, we did Midsummer Night's Dream. I had this great house for a while up in the Hudson River, 3 acres of land. And I had this idea that we'd do an actor's production of Midsummer Night's Dream. We cast it all from the actor's studio. There was no director, no stage manager, no costume designer, no property master. We all just furnished our own costumes, makeup, everything. And we got together and did it. And we rehearsed every weekend. It was such fun. Everybody came for 4 weekends and brought sleeping bags and slept all over the house. And then on the day of the performance, we performed outside and invited our friends. And the price of admission was food for 10. So everybody brought food for 10. And then we did the play all over the grounds. And afterwards had an Elizabethan feast, out in the grass. And it was just rollicking with, you know, cartwheels and drums beating and streamers flying and music. It was just wonderful. We did it 2 years in a row. And I must say those are almost like the ideal of an actor's life.
oh, of course.
To have that kind of experience. It was just fun.
Do you have a favorite part, a favorite role?
Yeah, I did a picture called Resurrection.
Oh, that's really fabulous. Fabulous.
Thank you.
If that was your favorite?
It was, you know, it's not a perfect movie. You know, people, movie makers, you know, will complain about this or that. But the heart of the movie is pure and intact and whole.
Well, why is it your favorite, though?
Well, because there's more of what's important to me in that movie than any other film. There's more about what I value. You know, the confrontation with death, the possibility of life after death, the power of the human being to heal ourselves and, if we're very talented, others. Love, the healing energy being the same as love energy. All those things.
Well, it's all in the
That
movie.
stuff.
It's definitely all in the movie.
Thank you. It was hard to get because I write a lot about that in the book. If you're interested in that film, I think you'll find that part interesting because it was one of those, this is an act I do, not just watch. There's a lot of drama around that film, but
Oh, and then Eva Le Gallienne, who I met too when I was a kid.
Yeah, she
great,
was
great
so
actress.
great in the movie. She plays my grandmother, and she's just she was the best actress America ever produced. But she only worked in the theater. She never was on film. And when she was 80 years old, I asked her to do Resurrection, and she plays my grandmother, and it's the only piece of film on her. So you get to see this sublime artist. And of course, she had a beautiful voice and a very cultured accent, but she plays my kind of country grandma, and it's pretty funny.
She's great.
She's wonderful. She's great. Yeah.
You know, you really have done everything because you were also president of Equity at the same time you were doing the show on Broadway. I think the same time last year.
No, I was. Oh, it was after that. It was
After.
when I was doing the artistic director of the Actors Studio and president of Actors Equity at the same time.
What is that like to juggle those roles of running a union and running a studio and?
Well, you don't really run the union. They have professionals
okay.
who do that. But
Oh, all right. I thought maybe you really did.
But you make a lot of speeches, I'll tell you, and run the council, which is pretty funny because it's, you know, Robert's Rules of Order, which I knew nothing about, and I had to. So the first day I ran the council, I said to all the council people there, I said, now you know and I know that I didn't get elected because I know how to do this. So you're going to have to tell me. So as I was rapping my gavel, and I kept making mistakes, and they'd call out to me what I should be doing. And they taught me how to run a meeting on the job. It was pretty interesting. I don't know what I was doing. I mean, I agreed to be president of the union, and then right after that, Lee died. So,
and then
then the studio kind of fell to me at the same time, and it was. I had an office on 46th Street and an office on 44th Street, and I just kept running back and forth. One day, Paul Newman looked at me and said, "Boy, are you a type A?"
And then when did you go and become sort of like a vagabond or a homeless person? That was another experiment.
I did a street retreat with Bernie Glassman, who's a Zen monk who takes people on retreat in the streets of various cities around the world. He started in New York, but he does them in Poland and everywhere now. And you just go in the street for a long weekend with nothing. No money, no credit cards, no ID, nothing. And you live however you can live. And Bernie knows all of the soup kitchens, and you know, it's with a small group. Most of the people in the group I was with one was a rabbi, one was, two of them were Tibetan Buddhist monks, Bernie's a Zen Buddhist, and there was only one other woman, and she was a social worker. And Bernie knows where the soup kitchens are, and you go there and stand in line and eat there and sleep on the street. And it's a huge experience because you don't really realize how many props we have all the time. You know, not just hair dryers and lipstick and all of that, but soap and a credit card, change in your pocket. And when you realize that you have nothing, and you have to then somehow get along, the world changes. The world looks different to you, because it's like we walk down the street with this sense of all of our stuff that we have. And we have to be careful to protect it from everybody else because they might try and get it from us. But when you have nothing, then everybody becomes your friend, possible friend.
At one point, somebody recognized you, though, even though you were didn't they? At one point?
Well, once we sat in the park for several hours, and one of the homeless guys in the park borrowed a piece of paper and a stub of a pencil and asked for my autograph. He was the only one who did. Mostly people didn't. At one point, everybody was going uptown further than I could walk, because I've had my knees replaced and they hadn't yet been replaced, so I was only going about 10 or 12 blocks at a time then. So I decided I had to take the subway, and the only way I could take the subway is if I begged for some money. So I went up to, there was a restaurant with some tables outside. It was Easter weekend. It was nice on this particular day, and two women were sitting at a table in conversation, and I decided I would get some money from one of them. So I walked up to him, and I didn't want to lie. I told them the truth. I said, "Excuse me, I need some money for a subway ride. Could either of you spare $1?" And the woman reached in her pocket and pulled out $1 and handed it to me without looking at me. And I took the $1, and I felt really proud of that $1, like I'd really accomplished something. I begged. It was hard. I did it. And I was feeling very happy as I walked across the street. And suddenly I became aware of these tears rising up. And I went, "What is this? What am I crying about?" And then I realized it was because she didn't look at me. And in that moment, there was a change. I knew that I wouldn't always give people money on the street when they asked for it, but I would at least look at them and acknowledge their humanity.
We can open it up now to questions. I hope you have some questions to ask.
There's one.
Him.
Hello.
Do you want me to stand or?
Well, what else can you do?
Actually, I have a comment and a question. First of all, you still look gorgeous.
Thank you.
My question is, as far as approaching a role, do you approach things the same way based on your training you had with Strasberg, or is every role different?
Yeah, I would say every role is different, and I think what happens with the more you're trained, the more the role speaks to you. You know, rather than you saying, "What am I going to do here? What am I going to do with this?" You just kind of receive it. You know, you read it and it starts talking to you.
I have a question. I loved your book, and
Thank you for reading it.
yeah, and one thing that I was surprised by was my interest in your spiritual journey and your finding of Sufism. And I wondered, because I'm in a place where I'm looking for a teacher, you know, and I know the old proverb, "When you're ready, the teacher will find you," or whatever it is. But I wondered if you had any advice for seeking it out in a more active way than I feel like I'm just waiting and it doesn't feel active enough.
Well, the teacher that I had, Pir Vilayat Khan, died a few years ago, but his son Zia is now a teacher, and he resides at the place called the Abode, which is it's upstate, and it's right on the New York-Massachusetts border. And there's a very nice group of people up there, and Zia is a really profound teacher, I understand.
Are you familiar with the program here in the city, the Sufism and the House of Sufi here?
I've never been connected to them, no.
All right, thank you.
I should be, but yes, right there.
I have a comment. I have a question. I'm from India.
You're from what?
India. You know, when I'm taking classes, when Lee Strasberg versus Meisner versus Stella, you know, why do they fight against each other? One is
Yeah. I don't know. It's one of those things, you know, if you really study with a few of them, like I studied with both Stella and Lee, you take what you what you want and what you can use and from each of them, and what doesn't work for you, you don't take, and you stay out of their fights. Because if you read any of the books of the period, like Kazan's biography, which is so wonderful, or The Fervent Years by Clerman, there's an awful lot of going into the fights, and I just don't see any value in getting into it.
But my real question is.
Oh, that wasn't your real question?
Question is, when I'm Indian, obviously they cast me like a cabbie or something like old Negroes were cast.
A little louder, please.
Like old black slaves were cast as slaves or something.
Stereotypes.
Yeah, so I'm beginning to write, okay, they're not going to give me a character. I'm going to write a character for myself.
Okay.
Would that be a beginning up in my spiritual journey?
Oh, honey, that's for you to say. I don't know. It could be. What do I know? Yes?
Yes, I would like that you could comment about your work in Requiem for a Dream, which I think is a fascinating journey. And if you could tell us what challenges did you face to get what drove you to that part?
Well, I was working on A Long Day's Journey and Tonight at the time, so I was well into addiction. You know, I was Mary Tyrone is addicted to morphine, so I was really kind of submerged in addiction. And this script came into me from my agent, and when I first read it, I went, this is the most depressing script I've ever read in my life. And who wants to go to a movie and see these people? I don't think I want to do this. So I said no to my agent, and she said, before you say no, just look at a film called Pi by the director. And I said, all right. So she sent me Pi, and I came home from Hartford for the weekend, and I put Pi on, and it was like this. I was sitting there, it started, and I was looking at it, and then I went, okay, I get it. Guy's an artist. So I called and said, yes, I'll do it, because I just wanted, I could see that Darren Aronofsky was really a unusual, creative mind. And so I was very glad I did it. I went to work with him and then just had the best time. He came up to see me in Hartford, do Mary, and we became fast friends. And he's really an amazing human being and visionary. So, and the challenges were everything. You know, the weight. You know, the first suit added 50 pounds. The next suit added only 25 pounds. And then I took off all the fat suits, and then it was my own body, and then we had a 2-week hiatus, and I went on a cabbage soup diet and lost another 10 pounds, and it was physically very, very demanding. The worst part of that film, believe it or not, was I had this neck that was a rubber neck up to here and down to here, and it was glued on me. And it took about an hour to put it on, but during the day, my skin absorbed all of the glue. So it took an hour to take it off, slowly peeling it off. And then once it was off, all the glue was still in my skin. So then I'd have to put red hot towels on my skin to bring the glue up and then scrape it off and do it again and again. So I would be bright red. It was horrible, painful. I was bleeding. It was a very, very difficult prosthesis to wear. I was very glad when we got past that part. And then, you know, just creatively, getting those electric charges, and it was horrendous, but it's such fun. It is. I mean, all those, you know, when you really get to be creative, you know, you get to do it all. It's wonderful.
There's someone.
There, yes.
Yes, I'm interested in knowing, I had to write this question down. I'm interested in knowing at what age actually, did you really feel that you came into your own as an actress in spirit, but also financially, were you able to think of yourself as a true working actress and you were able to support yourself?
Well, I've always supported myself, first modeling and then acting. I mean, I did commercials, I did soap opera, I did summer stock, I did television shows. I've always made a living as, once I started acting. I mean, I made a living as a model, and then when I started acting, I always made a living as an actress. So I must say I got encouragement along the way that I was on the right track, you know. Nobody was slamming the door in my face. As far as coming into my own as an actress, probably the last picture show I had Peter Bogdanovich said this wonderful thing, which I quote in the book. I said, it must be weird when you're auditioning people and somebody starts reading and you know after the first 5 minutes that they're not right for the part, but you have to hear the whole scene. He said, oh, you know long before that. You know when they walk in the room. I said, how do you know when they walk in the room? He said, a really good actress has a mysterious solidity about her. I thought that was the most incredible description of somebody who is carrying a gift. You know, they have a mysterious solidity. And it's, I think, what you're talking about. It's a sense of, oh, I have something to offer.
How old were you? I just
40. I hope it's faster than it was for me. Yes?
When I was a very young girl, my older brother was babysitting me, and he said, I want to go see this film, and I can't leave you here alone, so I'm going to have to bring you, and it might be a little heavy for you. And I was all excited. I was going to a movie with my big brother, and I went to the movie theater, and it was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Which I wasn't in.
Oh, you weren't in that?
No. Louise Fletcher and I look like each other. And people often ask me for my autograph and tell me how much they like me in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So for a while, I just signed her name. So don't be embarrassed. It's a common mistake. Yes.
I'll never forget the wonderful story that you told on the Academy Awards. I don't remember what year it was, about the holy man who had, it was this steaming place in India, I think it was. And
It was Tibet.
Tibet. He walks by and you feel this incredible cool breeze. And you asked, well, what is this? What was that? And he said, well, he's from the mountains. He's used to it being cooler up there. And you said, now that's control.
God, it's amazing you remember that story.
It really hit me because I was going to the American Academy when I had a younger brother who had gone through an incredible spiritual transformation, that when I saw him, I realized that as ambitious as I was, and I was claws out ambitious when I was coming to school here, he had something that I really wanted. Mm-hmm. And I found all my ambition just kind of evaporating. Mm-hmm. Eventually, you know, I've come back to it now because I believe that acting at its core is a very spiritual thing.
That's right.
And the question that I have for you, because you seem to be such a human being, is how do you keep your balance? How do you keep that center alive for yourself on a daily basis now?
You know, I don't make any separation. My spiritual life, my creative life, and my personal life, it's all one thing. I mean, I feel like we're souls evolving this time, and you know, we have this lifetime right here that we know for sure to evolve as much as we possibly can. And that's what I do in every way that I can. And I fail a lot, but my intention is always to grow and to be as authentic as I can possibly be, and as available and not false. I do the best I can. Yes?
You work in every medium, and I'm wondering, do you consciously modulate your performance, or do you just stay in your character in your moment and then worry about it?
Pretty much. You mean as far as size goes? Yeah. You certainly have to be aware when you're on stage of expressing with your whole body. I mean, you can't lift your eyebrow and have the balcony know what you're doing, you know. So I don't know that I consciously do it, but I intuitively do it. You know, the camera will read your mind if your mind is kind of clear. So you can do less for camera. And as a matter of fact, if you do too much, it looks like too much. But I don't, you know, think this is the stage, I better fill it. But it just intuitively does that. There.
With your incredible career, your great body of work, is there anything in any genre that you would just love to do that you haven't done?
Oh,
like
yeah.
a dream role or...
Oh, yeah. I don't know if I can still have a shot at Joan of Arc. I was gonna do it's probably too late. But I never directed a movie, and I should have, and I didn't. But all right, maybe I'll still do that. I don't know. There's lots. I want to do another play as soon as possible. I haven't been on the stage for a few years, and I need a fix. I'm a little greedy creatively. I want to do as much as I can all the time. Did you have your hand up? You're waving a mic, I see. Hello. Yes, shoot.
Despite the fact that you felt you had something to offer and that you were a very confident actress, did you nevertheless feel like an outsider at times during your successful career?
I still feel like an outsider. I don't really feel like I'm part of the Hollywood community. I think they think of me as a New York actress. I think in New York they think of me as a Hollywood actress, and I don't really feel like one of them, whoever they are, and I don't think that's bad. You know, I think having a sense of your own isolation is probably a true sense of how we all are in the world, and the sense of community is an illusion.
But when you knew that you would never fully belong, where did you go for strength to be your own person?
Inside. You know. I don't know how to say that any better. It's an inner process.
Something over there too.
Yes?
Yes, I find your work incredibly mesmerizing, and I was just wondering, in all your years of experience, was there anyone, person you worked with who was particularly inspiring or memorable in a way?
Well, I worked with John Gielgud. He was pretty amazing. Yeah. Dirk Bogarde, we were in John Gielgud and Dirk Bogarde and I were in a film together. Sam Shepard was pretty impressive.
He was great.
Yeah.
In Resurrection.
Yeah. I don't know. I've worked with a lot of wonderful people. I did a film called How to Make an American Quilt. Oh no, Maya Angelou was in there. She was fantastic. I used to go to her trailer and she would read poetry to me, and I would cry all my makeup off. The makeup artist forbade me to go into her trailer room. So I started going in with Q-tips, and I'd lay down on her couch with Q-tips and say, "Okay, do me." She'd recite poetry, and I'd dab my tears. She was great. Anyone else? Yes?
I fell in love with you in Resurrection because that could have been such a campy character, and it was the most emotionally devastating film I had seen up to that point. It was great.
Thank you.
For projects, would you be interested in film projects and directing comedy? Does that interest you at all?
Sure. Why, you got a comedy for me?
That's what she does.
Hey, I'm getting a job out of this. Okay, good. Back there?
As far as what's going on with women today, actresses, and in the realm of what kind of roles are out there, or even what kind of talent is out there that is popular, is there any women that you feel that you would really like to do some work with? As far as acting, is there like a wish list of trying some talent out?
Well, I always love Vanessa. She's so incredible. I would have always wished we would find something to do together. We never have so far. I admire her talent. I don't know, when I look at material that's available to me for any woman over 60, they're either already in the nursing home or trying not to go in the nursing home, or should they go in, or on the outside of it, or their kids want them to go in, but they don't want to go in. I just don't recognize anything there. So I keep waiting for somebody to write something about a woman over 65 that has nothing to do with the nursing home.
I think Tina Howe just wrote a new play about a woman your age who fell in love with a younger man.
Oh, I like that. Yes?
You said that you got Requiem for a Dream from your agent.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the way you get all your projects? Is it strictly through the agent, or?
Usually. I mean, people do send me scripts once in a while directly, but that's not generally a promising way to get them to my agent's best. Yes?
Why don't you write one?
Fresh thing. I wrote one. I wrote a script. Nobody liked it. Yes?
Your transition from, I know this was a different time, but your transition from going model to actress, was that a difficult one?
No, because of the kind of modeling I did. I used to pose for a photographer who shot photographs to give to artists for pocketbook covers or magazine ads, and then the artist would draw from the photographs. So I have all these photographs of myself modeling where in one I'm a gypsy dancer, and the next I'm a geisha girl, and the next I play all these different, I have makeup on and costumes, and it was kind of like acting, but just holding still while I was doing it. So
were people wanting to give you scripts right away? She's beautiful, she can be a gypsy lady, she can do this. Was it easy in that way that people looked at you and thought, oh, she's great, she could be an actress?
I don't know, I can't answer that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Back there.
Hi, Ellen. I have a question. You've obviously traveled a lot and seen the world, and I was wondering if there's any particular country or any place that influenced you a lot, or where you feel at home except for the States?
Well, I write about that in my book a lot. I've gone on safari in Africa and gone to Bhutan and India and Ireland, and I've been in a lot of places in the world and all over Europe. And the stranger, the better for me. The more exotic, the more at home I feel. I just want to keep on seeing as much of the world as I possibly can. When I left home, that was my ambition, not to be an actress, but to see the world. And I've seen an awful lot of it. Asia's amazing. I love Asia. Yeah.
If you could spend the day with anybody at any point of history, any person or character or somebody or something that inspired you, who would you sit down with and spend the day with?
Well, just one? Oh, it'd have to be Jesus. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, man, he's pretty much it, you know. This one over there, yeah. Yeah.
Hi, I was wondering. Sorry, which one of us?
Whoever. Both.
I was wondering, when you're on set and there's so many people, how do you walk out and, you know, it's always hurry up and wait. How do you retain whatever you've done to prepare for a scene in the context of all the chaos that's happening to be able to feel like you can start when they call action?
Centering and focus, concentration. I mean, it's the same. And I've found whether it's in meditation, acting on stage, getting through life, it's all about being centered, being quiet inside, and being able to focus and concentrate. Just let it all happen out there, whatever it is. Okay, now over there. Hi.
I'm curious because you talked about writing in your journals early on, and now you've written this book. Do you still write in journals, or when did you stop? And
No, I still write in journals.
And do you have any hobbies that other than the creative arts?
Yeah. All right. Next to that, playing with my dog, walking, gardening, reading, listening to music, art projects, you know, making cards, Christmas cards, birthday cards, playing. I like to play.
And on that note, thank you, Ellen Burstyn.
Thank you.